Hi guys, and welcome to my 56th video. Thank you so much for joining me if you are a return subscriber, or hello if you are new. My name's Adrina. I'm an Australian teacher and mum, currently on a break at the moment, trying to figure out this whole teacherpreneur online space, selling my teaching resources and clip art on Teachers Pay Teachers and online. Now, today's video is not about clip art, however, it is about Teachers Pay Teachers. So I have an interesting topic I want to talk about, and that is the future generation of Teachers Pay Teachers sellers. I was actually inspired by one of the sessions to actually make this video, and I think just to have a bit of a conversation about it might be interesting for some of you guys that follow me and have your own TPT stores. If you are brand new or just thinking about signing up to TPT, this might not make a whole lot of sense, but there might be some interesting things you'd like to know about still from watching this video. So before we begin, I've been literally waiting like 2 weeks now to actually open this package because I actually finally received my TPT shirt. So here it is. It's come in this little, I haven't opened it yet, so I'm going to open it now with you guys, and I'm going to put this on before we start chatting. But yeah, let's have a little look-see. Alrighty, so okay, so this is a little card that just comes with it. I just realized I think there was a bit of a printing error because on this side, it's like upside down, and then when you turn it that way to read it, you have to kind of flip it. So I don't know if that was on purpose or if that was not. But anyway, so this is basically what it says, and then I'll show you my shirt and then I'll get changed into it. But it says, "Hi TPTer. We're so happy you are joining us for TPT Forward 2022. Thank you for being a part of what makes TPT so special. We hope that you'll wear this shirt, take a photo, and use the hashtag TPT Forward 2022 while posting on social media. Sessions are available for you to view through August 31st, 2022, so we hope you keep posting the fun all summer long. Even though we may be apart, coming together is what makes this community so strong. We can't wait to see you in 2023, Team TPT." So that is a little card. I did mention in a previous video about the TPT conference and when I was going to go that I wanted to sign up a little bit earlier because my shirt arrived like a month later last year. And so it arrived again late this year, but at least the sessions go to the 31st. Today's the 22nd of August. So it's come just before the end of August. So next time, if I choose to go to the conference, being in Australia, I'm gonna have to literally do it like 2 months earlier to even get this shirt to sign up for it. Anyway, it is what it is. Let's have a little look-see. I actually really like this color, you guys. It's like a nice kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, but a nice green, like a, not a lime green, but almost like a teal green. And so I'm going to put this on, and I'll see you in a second where I put this on. So here's my shirt. I'll just show you a little preview. And I'm not gonna lie, I think that this color is really nice, and I actually prefer this color over last year's shirt. So this is last year's shirt, just for anyone wondering. This is like, it wasn't a bad shirt at all. Like, it was just like a nice dark green, which kind of really reflected the TPT brand last year. But I actually really I like this light color. I think that's really nice. So well done on the upgrade for the shirt. It'd be interesting to see what next year's shirt is, but yeah, anyway, I'm getting carried away. But I'm happy that my shirt's finally arrived, and at least I can wear it now before the end of August. So anyway, that's that. Let's get into what I actually want to talk about though. Okay, so let's get into the video, but before we begin, I just want to very briefly apologize about my voice. I am a little bit congested at the moment, so if I sound a bit croaky, I do apologize. I feel fine, but I've just got a little bit of a congestion going on. So anyway, grab yourself a hot chocolate, a green tea, a coffee, whatever you like, so we can just sit and chat. Okay, so let's first just talk about what do I mean by the next generation of TPT sellers. If you don't know, Teachers Pay Teachers actually started in 2006. So it is now 2022. That's 16 years. And a lot has changed in 16 years from when it initially started. I am a TPT seller that started in 2020. Kind of when the whole pandemic started. Now, when I'm thinking about it, in 2020, that was a year for a lot of change for everyone, like when the whole world shut down for the whole coronavirus stuff. So a lot of people were led online and they were finding other ways to, earn money online. And I would imagine that through that process, some teachers that were looking for additional ways to make money might have resorted to going to try and sell on TPT. At least for me, that wasn't necessarily the case. It wasn't because of the pandemic that made me start in 2020 my Teachers Pay Teachers store. It was actually because I was pregnant, but because I didn't want to go out doing relief teaching at the time because of the susceptibility of becoming sick as a pregnant person, I didn't want to risk that because we had a loss in pregnancy the year before. So that was not why I started TPT in 2020. But what I mean basically when I say that the next generation is we've had the last 16 years of people, seasoned sellers that have been on there since day one, talking at the TPT conference and expressing some of the changes that have happened over the last, 10 plus years. And so it's really interesting and fascinating as a newbie seller. And when I say newbie, I mean newbie because when I say newbie, I sort of mean beginner. I'm still a beginner because I kind of see it as the way I would see teaching. When you're a new teacher, you kind of classify it as a beginner teacher, at least in Australia you are, from years 1 to 3. If you're in years 1 to 3 as a teacher, in those first 3 years, you're still classed as a beginner teacher. And I kind of adapt that to TPT. In the first 3 years, I feel like we're still learning, excuse the plane. I still class myself as that beginner seller because there's still a lot to learn, even though, I've been selling on TPT since 2020, I'm still in my first 3 years. So when I say the future generations of TPT, I feel like I'm kind of just saying anyone from 2020 onwards now, because of all the massive changes through what happened from the pandemic, I feel like there's a new wave. There's a new wave of teachers looking into this. There's a new wave of people. There's more sellers on here than there ever have been. And I will actually go into some insights that I found quite interesting also through some of the sessions. But basically what I'm just trying to say is there is so many differences from starting a TPT store in today's day and age than it was 16 years ago. And it only made it more apparent and more clearer to me when I watched some of the sessions on the conference this year. So I want to just kind of talk about it a little bit. So in the conference this year, we had a wisdom sellers panel. That was one of my favorite sessions, actually, going to seeing the Chicago seller stories along with the wisdom panel. That wisdom panel was full of wealth, and I'm just grateful that I got to hear those conversations happening. I liked seeing that it was sort of live in the way that you could see their interactions with each other and you could kind of see the energy between the sellers on screen. I like that because it is different when you're seeing someone do a pre-recorded video to doing a recorded live and then putting it up on as a virtual session. So in that particular session, so the wisdom panel, the seasoned sellers who have been on there for a long time all said that, TPT has changed. TPT, it's not the same as it was back in the day. Back in the day, from what they're saying, it was much simpler times. It was much more, you throw something up there and it's sold. And the amount of things that you had to do, there wasn't as much as we are now faced in 2022. As a beginner TPT seller, or still in my beginning phase of Teachers Pay Teachers in my first 3 years, I thought that was interesting to hear that from those seasoned sellers. And I just wanted to say, those sellers, because they've been on the platform for so long, they have seen the multitude of changes that have happened. And to be completely honest, even since 2020 when I started my first store, the Creative Table, I have seen so many changes since then. And it's only been 2 years, so I can only imagine what, the seasoned, experienced sellers have seen over the years. So I just want to give you a couple insights that I wrote down from one of the sessions at the TPT conference. The insights here is basically there are 7 million educators active on TPT. That's 7 million educators active on TPT. Now there are 6 million educational resources as of 2022 and only continuously growing. But as of that presentation, 6 million educational resources listed on TPT, and there are 170,000 teacher authors, and I would only imagine that's going to continue to grow. Okay, so I thought that was really interesting, 170k teacher authors on TPT. And this morning actually I watched Lorianne's from It's All Primary's video. She posted an amazing video talking about, so if you're in the TPT community you're going to know this, but if you're not, you'll probably like, what's she got on about? Anyway, so Lorianne from It's All Primary made a video talking about the data that Alexandra Baxter from the Terrific Teacherpreneur, shout out to Alex because she and I forgot the other girl's name, but watch Lorianne's video if you want to know a bit more about it. But that survey she conducted was a survey between 1,007 Teachers Pay Teachers sellers or authors, and it was really interesting to see the stats on that. So when you have the insight of there are actually currently 170,000 teacher authors on TPT, and that survey was only 1,007 of us, there's 160k teacher authors that weren't a part of that survey. So that was just like a little snippet into what it looks like in the TPT landscape. Anyway, I'm kind of digressing a little bit, but go and watch Lorianne's video because it was really insightful. Rules, another YouTube channel, also touched on some things about that from Lorianne's video, and it was just kind of interesting to see the discussions happening here on YouTube about it all. When Alex actually released the survey, because I'm part of her Facebook group, I was actually really excited to see, but because I'm not really a numbers person, I didn't go too deep into looking at the numbers. But the way that Lorianne presented it in her video, I was like, oh, okay, she's breaking it down for me to understand it a bit better. So I was like grateful for that, and I'm like, okay, I can see things clearer now. Sometimes things hit you differently when someone else explains it to you. So anyway, I thought that was really interesting that she was sharing that little survey. And when I thought about, how many teacher authors there actually are, according to what I saw in the TPT session, 170k, that's quite a few of us on here. It's definitely, Teachers Pay Teachers is definitely niche still, but like that's a fair few amount of people that are on here selling. So anyway, I wanted to just basically talk about this next generation. Like I was saying in the beginning, in 2020, when the whole pandemic happened, a lot of people went online, a lot of things, because we couldn't go out anywhere. I feel like this new wave, Teachers Pay Teachers sellers have started in this 2020 period. So when I was listening to the Sharing Your Wisdom panel, I found it so interesting. These seasoned, experienced sellers were saying, like TPT has changed so much, even for them. Of course, over the years, things are going to change, but it's almost as if teachers that are coming in to sell on TPT now in this kind of phase of the internet and this phase of this new generation or new wave of teacher authors, it's like there's so much more now that it's so much more overwhelming for some teachers starting this. And I just want to kind of highlight some of the things that these seasoned, experienced sellers wanted to point out, because it was a different landscape to what it is now. TPT is a lot more established than it was once it first started, and some of the key people I'm going to mention in this video, like at least from a newer seller perspective, they have been the backbone of what has gotten TPT to where it is today. Like all of their collaborations in the past with other people, and just their input into making TPT a better site and whatever else. So basically the older seasoned sellers who have had a lot of involvement into the growth of TPT over the years, they've seen massive changes as well. So I just think it's important to kind of take their information, take their knowledge on board as newer sellers, because there's always something to be learned from someone that has already traveled that path. And even though they are seasoned sellers, there comes a lot more different challenges when you're a seasoned seller and you're trying to now then adapt to all the new things and all the new current things that are happening, if that makes any sense. So just a very, very quick brief history about TPT, like really brief, because I don't want to go too deep into it, but I just think as a newer seller, these are some of the key highlights that are important to know. So basically, Teachers Pay Teachers was founded by Paul Edelman in 2006. And he was a public school teacher, I think, for 4 years in New York City. And he basically had this awesome idea to make an open marketplace for teacher-created materials. So Paul Edelman was the man that actually founded it. And then not long after, I have to look at the details again, but from what I can remember, Scholastic actually bought it from Paul Edelman, and then Paul Edelman then had to buy it back from Scholastic. And so I don't want to go too in depth into that because I am going to mention Rachel Lynette. She's a big seasoned seller, and she said in the conference, in that session, you know, she's actually put a presentation. She's like, you guys in the TPT virtual land, go and check that out because there are newer sellers, aka like people like me that didn't really know about this information. I actually watched that presentation last year, so I had a bit of an understanding, but I thought it was in my first year last year going to that conference. I watched that. I really liked it actually to kind of get a bit more background about it. So I think it is important, and I'll see if I can try and link it down below. It's on her TPT store and it's free, and it's just a really good insight into the whole beginnings of TPT. Rachel Lynette literally started on day one of TPT, so she has a wealth of knowledge and she knows kind of what has happened over the years, and she's still active in this TPT community. So I'm just sharing this on because I feel like I'm coming from a more of a newer generation of the TPT authors, and I feel like it's important to acknowledge and say like the people that have put in that work for us to be able to continue having this as an opportunity. Anyway, so on the Sharing Your Wisdom panel, we had Vera. I'm not going to even try and pronounce her last name. I apologize because her last name is a little bit tricky for me to pronounce. We had Dee Dee Wills, we had Luke Rosa, we had Jacqueline Ortiz. I'm sorry if I said that incorrectly. And we had Deanna Jump and Rachel Lynette. Now, Deanna Jump is also a big name in the TPT kind of world, and she is one of those ones that when you think of Deanna Jump, oh my goodness, you think of like CNN interview where she was like the first teacher millionaire on Teachers Pay Teachers. And I'll show you like a little brief thing here on YouTube. And she was also a keynote speaker, and actually her keynote is amazing. Like if you want to get some inspiration, her keynote is really inspirational. Go and check that out if you want to know a bit more about Deanna Jump. So anyway, the fact that those people like Deanna Jump, you know, Rachel Lynette, who was there from day dot, and some of these other amazing seasoned sellers, you know, it's awesome that through the internet or through like this conference that you can actually get to hear a little bit about what they have to say about the matter on TPT. So I just want to kind of pass on some of their knowledge because I feel like this will be helpful to some others, and I just think it's important to kind of like think about this if you are coming in to Teachers Pay Teachers in this newer generation or this newer wave of TPT authors. So there were actually a lot of good questions that were picked out prior to the actual conversations for the teacher authors to answer. And I just want to kind of go and give you some of what they have said and to give you guys some of their advice, what they kind of recommended. So one of the things that spoke to me from what Vera said in the wisdom panel was sticking to who you truly are. So be true to yourself. She basically went to say like, you know, it doesn't matter how well I do on TPT, I can still hold on to who I am. What I got from that was like sticking to your values, sticking to who you are as a person, not doing things that aren't in alignment to who you are as a person, you know. So regardless of what's going on around you, stick true to you. So, you know, just because someone else is doing this doesn't mean you have to do it if that's not aligned to you, if that's not in alignment to your values for your business. I think she was coming from a very holistic place of her happiness and just coming from a place of in the business of TPT, it can be a lot, but to stay true to who you are, and you're going to have much more happiness and success with that regardless of money side of things. You're going to be able to be true to who you are and be in alignment to what you want in your life and how you're managing this business. So I thought that was really a good thing that she said. Dee Dee was actually super funny. I was actually like cracking up at how she was interacting with the other sellers, and yeah, I just enjoyed her vibe and her energy on that sellers panel. She made me laugh, so that was funny, but she also had really good things to say. So, because one of the questions from what I can remember was with the changing technology, like how do you stay like up to date and fresh with being out of the classroom? And basically some of her advice, so if you are going from someone that has been in the classroom and you've decided to leave the classroom or you're on a break or whatever, how do you stay current? Her advice here was basically read like crazy. She does a lot of reading about her topics. She's also looking at like TPT sellers in other, I guess, Facebook groups and stuff like that, and looking for what are their pain points right now and what could she create, I guess, to provide a solution. She also says, you know, like you have to be mindful that like other people that are TPT sellers, you don't know if another seller has best practices. So to be able to stay current, you need to always make sure that you're continuously learning and continuously reading and knowing what the current things are to stay up to date. So it's really important for you to kind of go out and do that learning every day, informing yourself about those best practices as time goes on. So she really, you know, suggests like dedicating 30 to 40 minutes in your schedule to make sure that you're keeping up with that. Dee Dee had a lot of good information actually. She also kind of went on to say, you know, when people come to your content, you need to make sure you fill it up with a lot of give before you ask to take. So you really need to fill that, whatever you're providing, with a lot of value. Making sure like it's not just like, here, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this. You making sure that, you know, you provide that value to your audience before you go and say, can you buy this or whatever, you know. But she's really saying fill it with value. And I feel like here, even on YouTube, like that is also the case. So whether that be in TPT land or YouTube or any kind of social media platform, it's about giving your audience that value. What are they getting? Why would they want to watch you? What makes you interesting to them for them to care about what you have to say? Give things away for free, because at the end of the day, it's like it needs to serve them in a way. What do they get? And you think of your viewing habits too. Like, why would you watch somebody? You watch them because you want to learn something. You watch them because you think, oh, they've got something interesting to say about something, or you know that they've got the experience in something. That's why you watch or learn or read or whatever. So basically she's just saying, give a lot before you ask. She also really highlighted email lists. And again, like this is, as a newer seller, you're like, oh, the email list, I gotta do an email list. Like you hear email lists everywhere. Like even for me, at the moment, email lists, like I know it's on my radar, but I'm still kind of finding that a little bit tricky to try and navigate. Like all the seasoned sellers say the same thing. Nothing converts like an email list. And you know, I'm sure Becca, if you watch Becca's channel too, like she really promotes that too. She gets probably a lot of ka-chings from her email list as well, but she also gives a lot for free too. So, you know, that's something to be very mindful of, because email lists have come up multiple times from a lot of successful sellers. When you're at that league, you do need to be able to scale up, to be able to branch out, to have that. An email list is going to be handy. Might not necessarily have to do it in your first 3 years. I don't know. Like I am still trying to figure it out as well. But if you've got an email list and you know that it converts and you're like, yes, email lists are really good, then that's amazing that you've got that going. But you know, it can be something that's really interesting as a newer seller, because we're like, okay, well, how do we do this while we're literally just trying to start this whole thing out? So when do we incorporate the email list, you know? So anyway, she basically said, choose your long form content. You do have to be uncomfortable at some point to be able to get comfortable. That's what she says. So you have to be uncomfortable to get comfortable, and I thought it was really good. You know, even like with me starting this YouTube channel, and I've seen a few more TPT, you know, people popping up, and I'm like, oh yes, like bring this community, like let's make it bigger. Let's make, you know, TPT a thing on YouTube, you know. So I would say we'd have about 20 YouTube channels that are talking about TPT that are kind of current at the moment. But yeah, like I just think it's interesting that for me, I'm like, okay, for me to do something like YouTube, I had to get uncomfortable, and I had to, even now, like this, I'm not even at 100 videos yet, and I'm still just trying to do my best. But you have to be uncomfortable to get comfortable, and that's what I love, because I'm like, yes, that's what I'm trying to do here as well. Try to really just master that one thing that you've picked. Don't go and do everything. Don't have to do all the things. Her advice was basically prioritize one long form content and then get into your email list. They're the two things that she was really like promoting. For me, I've chosen YouTube, and that's why I haven't actually started Instagram, because I really want to hone in my platform here on YouTube first, and then in the future when I'm feeling like, okay, I've got more time or whatever, like I can then branch out. But right now what I'm prioritizing is YouTube, and then in the future I want to then probably get into the email listing, but I'm still learning about that. Another thing I found really interesting, speaking about future generations of TPT sellers, was that Dee Dee said, this is what she said, you know, in the day, like back in the day, you were able to create a resource. You'd be able to create a blog post and you could literally go, hey, I made this new product, you can go buy it now. The end. And she's like, yo, that was so bad. And she's basically saying now, like, if she was to start in 2022, yeah, think about your long form content and how you're going to create a searchable resource. So long form and searchable, they're two really big things that, you know, she was promoting. If you don't have any followers, nobody's going to find you, or they are going to have to look really hard for you. Like, that is so important to know, because, you know, when you're starting out, you think, oh, the internet's so instantaneous. Like, you just click on a button, you're at Google, you click on a button, you're at Pinterest, you know, and we think that's the same for developing businesses online, but it's not. And so if no one can find you, it's not necessarily that you don't have a good product. It's just like no one can find that. It's like, think of it as if if you had a bag of gold and you went to a forest and you just dropped it somewhere in the forest. No one's going to find that bag of gold, or maybe one person that has stumbled into the forest to go cut some trees, they'll find that bag of gold or find your TPT resource. But if you put that gold bag in, say, a shopping center, oh, there's people going to be snatching at that. So that's just like kind of one way to think of it. Like, you have to put it in front of people for people to want to go and grab it in some way. So she's saying that you need to be able to be found in search to be able to do that. You know, she said, if I make a blog post today, it's not going to rank right away. It's going to take some time, but follow the SEO advice. Especially when I started in 2020, like, I didn't even know what SEO was, and it's taken me over time to understand it more. And it does take time. Like, I was like, what the heck is this SEO? Like, I've never heard of this before. And now that I'm like, okay, I'm in this, I get it. SEO is on every single platform, YouTube, Etsy, everything. SEO is such an important thing. Blogging, like, so many things online just require that SEO, because if you think about it, if it's a computer generated thing, you're not just going to go off emotions. The computer generated algorithm need to scan these words to put in front of people. So you need to really think about, how are you wording these products? How are you creating your description so that someone can actually, or the algorithm can promote you, or you can be found in that algorithm, whatever platform that you are online. It's all very strategic when it comes down to it, and every algorithm on any different platform is different. If you can figure out that SEO stuff, then that will definitely be helpful. I know that Lorianne also mentioned Kirsten Doyle's SEO bootcamp. I took that recently this year actually also, and that has opened my eyes a little bit more to getting a bit more knowledge. So I'm glad I've taken that as well. Yeah, I feel like it's taken me this long, like literally a couple of years, to just even kind of wrap my head around it, to realize, okay, what you have to do to be able to be found. And there are different ways to, you know, alter it and tweak it and do things like that. But anyway, I feel like the more that we talk about it here on YouTube and other platforms, you know, the more newer people coming into this are going to be like, oh, okay, well, I need to know about SEO before just like being like, let me just chuck up a product and just hope it sells. You know, these people are, if they don't have this information, you don't know what you don't know, you know what I mean? So like, especially when I started, like, I didn't know about SEO. It was me, the only reason I found out was because I was actively searching through Facebook groups, you know, watching Becca's channel at the time, because she was the only one on YouTube at that time, and Lorianne's It's All Primaries at the time that I was kind of like starting, that was like helpful to me. That was only thing I kind of look at. And then I started branching out to podcasts and listening to those, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to learn more now. And then I realized the TPT conference. So it's all like a trickle effect, but over time, I guess, like, it become more common knowledge that, okay, if you're a beginning teacher author, you need to definitely look into your SEO. That's an important thing, and like, so many people have said that. And it's not literally just TPT, it's for like the majority of every online platform. Okay, so what did Luke have to say? This was the same question as Dee Dee's. If you were starting your TPT store today, what would you do differently? But you know, he said like, it has been such a big change. He started in 2012. He could create a resource and it would be like immediately at the top of search, and that's unheard of now, because you don't, as a newer seller particularly, if you were to start today, you're not going to rank on the very first line unless you're in a very, very particular niche product that no one has or something like that, it's going to be very rare that you're going to be ranking first. So you really need to, again, going on SEO, you really need to think about how are you doing these descriptions, how are you creating your titles, all that stuff, to be able to be found in search. And so he says, like, you know, if you create a resource, it's not going to be seen by anyone. You really need to have to promote it. And, you know, he said, if I was starting now, building my platform first, doesn't matter if you're a first or second year teacher, you have a new perspective for people and you need to share that. So it doesn't matter if you have only been teaching for, 1 to 2 years, you still have a unique perspective of the climate of teaching now. But mind you too, if you are someone that has a wealth of experience, say you've been teaching for 30 years, you have such a bank of knowledge. If you are like wanting to start TPT and you've just been thinking about it, and you're like, okay, well, I've been teaching for 30 years, you're in such a prime place in your life to be able to just do something like this and share what you have learned over your 30 years of experience. You've got so much wisdom wrapped in that brain. Share it with the world if you're looking at getting into this and you're like someone that has that experience. He also mentions blog. He also mentions he would record on video. Video is such a big thing right now. If you think too even of Instagram, of how much they've tried to like push video reels and stuff like that. Like video is the next thing. Like video is such a powerful thing at the minute. And in 2022, some sort of, if you are doing a resource store, it might be different doing Clipart. Like for me, I don't know if videos would necessarily help sell my stuff. It could. I haven't tried it out yet, but if you are doing a resource store, then having videos showing someone how that resource could be used would be really important, especially if it's a bigger product or if it's like a digital product that you can show easily, then that's going to help you with the sales because people can see what's actually involved in it instead of just like a thumbnail. So anyway, he says also, whatever your platform you're most comfortable in building, build that first to build an audience and share out your TPT store link. So whether that be, say, if you want to create a YouTube channel, whether you wanted to create an Instagram, whether you wanted to create a TikTok, like what else is out there, like any kind of thing with video, I guess as well would be ideal. It doesn't have to be your face if you're worried about, showing your face. It could be just like your hands showing products or just giving value in a way, even if it's just your voice. But yeah, building an audience is going to be really important. He also mentioned too, when you post a new product, it gets emailed out to your followers. So if you have no followers, if you don't build yourself an audience, it's going to be a lot harder to have that email that goes out to people on your, follower list for potential buyers. But mind you, I do know like people shop differently. So some people will just buy from search. They'll just be looking for something like a rush teacher in the morning. I just want to find this for today. Add to cart. Buy it now, and they don't even look at your store. There are people that are on there like that, and there are also people that are following you genuinely because they love your stuff and they're like, okay, what is she going to put out next? What is he going to put out next? So there are different types of buyers, so don't get too caught up with that. But to have, a bit of an audience on your TPT account and also somewhere else to drive traffic, it can't hurt, you know what I mean? So that is something that's kind of important, I thought, that he had to say. And he also said, instead of like, if you are someone that cranks out products, say if you're batching and you've created 10 products, say if like you're a clip artist or someone that can create a lot of things quickly, you don't have to be a clip artist, you could be a resource store too that does things quickly. But if you did create all those products, don't just release 10 on the same day. If you can, drip feed them. Like this is what he said. Basically like slowly release them so they're going out to your followers more frequently rather than just bang all in one day. And so to maximize on that, if you do have a blog, and this is going into like once you're more settled and established, not really new sellers, because even for myself, I don't have a blog. I don't have anything like that yet. If you do have a blog and you're at that point in your journey, then utilize that, suggest that and write about it in your blog. Tell people about this particular resource if you can, and what it can do and how it can help. All right, so this is getting a little bit longer than I expected. When do they not get longer than I expect? Some advice that Jacqueline had to share in this wisdom panel was she answered the question too, like, other than creating quality products, what is the number one thing that I should be doing for my business? So as beginning TPT sellers, we know that product creation is going to be the number one thing that we need to do. If you've just started yesterday, product creation, getting better at that, learning how to actually navigate TPT. That's your first thing that you need to do. But the question there was, what would she do other than that, other than doing the quality products? Her answer to this was actually collaborating with other people. Now, I don't know exactly how she meant by collaboration, whether that be like participating in, I don't know, hashtags. I don't know exactly what she meant by that, but I know that communication is probably what she's trying to get across with that. Because she was saying, someone reached out to her in her early journey. They still talk to this day. She's made friends from that collaboration that she did in the earlier days of her TPT store. And so it's interesting because as a newer seller, the way that I was able to kind of figure out some more things was also going and joining up to the Facebook groups and reading what people had to say. And, I have reached out to a few people before. Like I have reached out to Becca before. I've reached out to Alex before. So I've chatted to them in the DMs before, and like it's nice to be able to have, if I have a question, like I've asked them questions before. So it's interesting that if you are looking at a way of like building more community and having that, I think the Facebook groups and like having some sort of community can really help with you understanding and figuring out this whole TPT world, really. Alright, so the next two sellers, Deanna Jump and Rachel Lynette, what they had to say was really valuable as well. And I feel like Deanna Jump, that name in the TPT world is quite a big name because of her being that first millionaire on TPT. And Rachel Lynette, she's been here since day dot. She's been here since the very first day that TPT had started. She was there on the first day. So to be there on the first day and still be here in 2022, like that is some commitment. So she has a wealth of knowledge. So I'm going to just kind of share kind of what spoke to me from what she kind of said. I'll speak of Deanna first. When she was answering those questions, about how things have changed on TPT, she basically said like, what hasn't changed? Like so much has changed. She said like most products you didn't even like need a cover or a preview for. Like what was that back in the day? You didn't have to have that. In this day and age, 2022, that's standard. If you don't have that, if you don't have a preview or cover, you're gonna be missing out on some things for potential of that resource selling. When you're looking at the landscape, obviously back then it was so different because it was new. TPT has become a bit more established now, so there's the high expectation of what is expected for when you are putting something on there, and having a preview and having a cover is almost just standard now. And so, she said from back in her experience from back in the day, you just put something up there and then you just start getting sales right away. Everything's changed, she said, from her point of view. Like everything has changed. She's not... It's funny how she mentioned this. Actually, she's like, we no longer use Microsoft Word. And see, for me, before I even started this, I knew already not to use Word because people like Becca had shared that, like to use PowerPoint, not to use Word, to use PowerPoint. And so as time goes on and as like information is more freely accessible and more shared, we come to all get better at our businesses, I think. Anyway, she said, the things that have changed that she's saying, Chevron, that's changed. But the biggest thing that she said that has changed, she's like, I'm an accidental success story. She was just sharing her products and it just turned into a full-blown business. All of that stuff, like people were like, oh, it was novelty to be able like someone to create that and you could buy it for your classroom and you could access that and use it in your classroom. It was so new right then. Now in today's generation with technology like being so much more advanced, it's almost expected that we do that, so it's just different from then for her. And even for like how I think about it now, like coming into teaching when I have like without the internet, like it boggles my mind because we've grown up in this generation of internet, whereas like teachers that some of my colleagues that I've worked with, they said they're older seasoned teachers now. And like they'll say like the internet wasn't out there when I started doing my teaching, and like it was so different. The landscape of teaching was just so different back then. It's the same as like what's happening with TPT now too. So she basically said too, like to be able to thrive and survive on TPT now, you need to learn these things like the SEO. And she also did mention Kirsten Doyle's course, which I was like, when she mentioned that, I was actually really glad she mentioned that, because I'm like, as a beginning seller, I'm taking that and she's taken that too, and she's like quite a big seasoned seller, so she's like also done that too. So, you know, we're all just trying to learn from each other. We're all just trying to share. We're all just trying to like do the best for our businesses, right? Anyway, so SEO was brought up again from Deanna. It's funny because she like even said like, can't we just go back to the way it was? It was so much easier. So that tells me as a like seasoned seller, even though you've had a massive amount of success, like it can still be challenging at that point of, you know, people think, oh, you know, you've done this, but to maintain that level of success, that takes a lot of work too. It's different when you're starting from like the beginning stages because you're like, oh, that's where I want to be. But when you're there, it's a different situation because, you know, like I now need to know how to keep this and I need to know how to maintain this and I need to keep up with the times. It's not just like, yep, it's done, I can go sit back. No, it's like a continuous learning cycle, and that's just teaching, and that's just like, as teachers we know that. It's lifelong learning for everything. So anyway, I thought that was really interesting that Deanna had that to say, and so now I want to talk about what Rachel Lynette had to say. She had to say for this question, what has changed the most about being a TPT seller in the last decade, and how have you handled the change? So she said lots of things have changed, so there's so much more now, and like I was saying previously, like as a beginning seller, if you are wanting to start TPT like tomorrow, if you've not started and you're like, oh, I'm thinking about doing a TPT store, there's just so much more than there ever was. And it's not a bad thing, but it just means that there are a lot more things that we need to consider in a holistic way for our business. But it doesn't mean we need to be overwhelmed. We just need to, like what they were saying too, pick the one thing that you want to really focus on and get good at that. What she said here was like, there is so much more now. And she said a similar thing to Deanna, you know, when she first started, you just start with a product and that was pretty much it. And then maybe you wrote about it on Facebook. There literally wasn't much. It was like Facebook and Pinterest and maybe a blog. They were the three things. There wasn't TikTok, there wasn't Instagram. I know about TPT YouTubers at the time even. Like, I don't even know about that, like if that was a thing. Podcasts, like all those things have been newer additions to this newer wave or newer generation of, you know, technology and like the new wave of TPT sellers, I guess too. She says with all the things, the way that she kind of handles it is that she has to prioritize what is important to her, choose the most important thing, focus on that 20% that will get you the furthest and let the rest go. So as we're getting into this TPT business, if you're like brand new, you look at all these, you know, successful sellers, you know, they've got Pinterest, they've got this, they've got this, they've got this, they've got this. But, you know, when you're first starting out, you have to realize some of those people actually have teams now. They have virtual assistants. They have people helping them do this. They're not running them one person. So if you are just that one person, focus your energy on that 20% that is going to get you the furthest. So if that's just like you want to prioritize your, you know, TikTok, or you want to prioritize your YouTube, or you want to prioritize your blog, whatever you want to choose. It could even be Pinterest. I know a lot of the TPT sellers are saying like, you know, everyone's sort of like angry at Pinterest at the moment because of like what's happened in the newer phase of Pinterest. Like Pinterest used to be a really great traffic driver, but it's changed so much with the algorithm that, you know, it's not to say that it's not still helpful, but it's changed in a lot of ways. But it could be changing for the better because I've heard something on the grapevine about Pinterest where they're looking at it, at creating it. Who did the video on that? I can't remember, but anyway, someone did a video. I watched a video somewhere on YouTube. They were saying about Pinterest now possibly a way that you can shop from. Instead of leaving the Pinterest platform, you can shop from Pinterest, and that will be interesting to see how that maybe will integrate with TPT stuff if you are someone that is using Pinterest. Anyway, I don't use Pinterest that much, so I don't, like, it's been a long time since I've really touched my, so I'm not going to go into Pinterest. But what I wanted to also really highlight about Rachel's advice though, the fact that, you know, the TPT authors during the time when it was very beginning, they shared openly with one another. They did lots of promotions, they were so supportive, and they helped each other in those forums and like just helping each other out because they knew what it was like being a TPT seller, especially in the early days, is what she's kind of said. They didn't have to give away those advice or those knowledge nuggets. They could have kept that and been really protective about that. That's what she was saying. But because we have the heart of a teacher, if you become a teacher, you know that collaboration is a part of your vocabulary. Like, there is no way you can be a teacher without collaboration. You just can't. There has to be collaboration in your teaching career, with other teachers, you know, with your students. Collaboration is just part of the deal. And so she's saying, like, as a teacher, having that heart of a teacher to be able to collaborate and not hold that so protectively, because you wanted to see each other thrive. Because, you know, when one person thrives and you can help someone else, they can all thrive at the same time. It's not, even though they were in competition in some ways, you're still with, you know, to be able to share that information out. And even, like, I guess Becca does a lot of the free advice. She does a lot of awesome videos. It's All Primary does a lot of videos. And there's other YouTubers that are sharing all their knowledge that they have. I think Lauren Fulton's one also that's sharing, like, lots of cool things online too. And, like, even the podcast situation, and Alexandra Baxter, she shares a lot of awesome information in her podcast. Like, I love her podcast. So anyway, the fact that we're all here trying to educate and share what we sort of know, it's important because it gets us all further as well. It helps us all. And when we all succeed, you know, like they were saying too, I'm supportive of this quote. So when they said this quote, I was like, yes, yes, yes. This is the quote, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats. And it's so true. A rising tide lifts all boats. If we all work together and we all want the best for each other, instead of being like, oh, you know, I want to try and do better than you. Like, it's not about that at all, because there's enough room for everyone. There's enough money to go around in the world. There's enough of everything. The world is abundant if you believe that. And to share what you know, like in some form. Obviously, you don't want to give every single thing for free because that doesn't pay the bills. But the same token, to give a lot of value for free with not expecting anything back, that is important, because in this kind of industry, or in this like TPT world, like if we all learn and know how to make good products, how to have a high quality product, how to, you know, do the things that we need to do and know to do TPT, then we're all going to thrive. If we've got this knowledge here and we can share it with others, we're going to all thrive and all rise up. And so anyway, it's not about comparing yourself to others. One of her big things too, it's not about comparing. Comparison is the thief of joy. She has been here from day one, so I feel like being in the newer generation of TPT, it's important to highlight that, you know, she said like she was actually instrumental into bringing boom cards onto the platform on TPT. I didn't know that. Like, us as newer sellers coming in here, we didn't know those, you know, some of those seasoned sellers were like advocating to have more options to have boom cards and other things like that in their businesses. Like, that's important too. Boom cards, I'm not selling them so frequently at the moment, but I have made some money through boom cards, and I thought that was just a thing that Team TPT kind of like just had. I didn't know that, you know, she was someone that helped get boom cards on the platform. Who knew? So all the past TPT sellers who've made it to become what it is now, and even for us newer generation sellers that are then kind of learning what the older generation have tried to pass on, it's our, not our duty, but it's like important for us to also share with others to kind of get to a page where we're like this new future generation of teachers pay teachers. So we know how to do this. So we know how to do this as business, so we can all thrive and we can all do the best for ourselves, our businesses, and for each other. And so I think that's really important. So with a seasoned seller like Rachel Lynette, who has been literally there since day one, I feel like some of that advice is just really important to know. And if you are, I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this, but if you are a newer seller like I am in that beginning phase, or if you just wanting to know a bit more of the history of TPT, I'm going to link it below. On her TPT page, she has, and the reason why I'm saying this, because I remember her saying in like the actual session, she's like, for the newer TPT sellers, if you haven't gone and watched this and you want to know a bit more about the history of TPT, it's actually really informative, and it's got some snapshots of like how it kind of came to be. It's really actually quite interesting. Then go and watch that video. She's put it for free on her store, and with someone that has been there from day dot, that's important to kind of know about and to the history of that. Anyway, one last thing that I forgot to also mention, this is going back to Luke's, I forgot to mention in his little section. And it's funny because he's like, we are all teachers, so we talk for longer than we expect. And I'm like, yeah, guilty. Like even on this video, guilty. I thought that was hilarious. That is just so true. If you're a teacher, You could just blab on forever. At least that's how I feel. Anyway, but he said something that I thought was really interesting. So this was a quote from Luke. He said, "You don't find customers for your products, you find products for your customers." So I thought that was really interesting, and he was like saying, always think about how you can help customers that are out there. And obviously marketing is an important way to do that. And now this is not something up my alley right now, but if you are a bigger seller and you're watching this, or a seasoned seller, he mentioned TPT Pixel, and I have no idea about TPT Pixel, but he was saying something about TPT Pixel being a good way of showing data to target particular people for like Facebook ads, to get their email, use the tools to create like a lookalike audience and to grow your audience. So I don't know anything about that. I just wanted to share that just in case someone else is like a seasoned seller and they've got a Facebook group or whatever. But see, like things like that, like where you've got seasoned sellers talking about TPT Pixel, that was like so far from what I'm thinking about doing right now. But it's interesting to know that there's those things to think about possibly in the future. Anyway, so to wrap this up, there was some good advice from those seasoned, experienced sellers that have been on the platform for a long time. And it's just really amazing to see, like, this is not just like uploading something online. There is a community behind TPT. There is a community behind what we're doing, even though it can be very isolating, and you know, it's a job that is an individual journey at times, but in the grand scheme of things, like there's that kind of like connection almost, if you're a teacher as well, but not just that, because you've got that teaching connection. It's also like if you're a TPT seller and a teacher, you've got like that extra connection because you know the struggles, like, so what I want to say too, just before I wrap it up, is, so I just want to answer these really quick questions. So what did I get most out of the conference here? But Trello was probably the best session. I actually got the most practical advice out of by Ashley Wright. I am going to do a little video on just showing you my Trello board, showing you what I kind of have done with my Trello board after watching that session. And because I didn't like Trello before, if I'm completely honest, I actually tried Trello before watching this video, and I was like, it's kind of just like a note-taking app or something. I didn't really think it was that good when I first started it, and then I was like, oh, hold on, watch Ashley's session. I was like, hold on, no, I can do something with this now. I got it. So like, I want to do a video about Trello in the future. But the keynotes were really, I loved hearing about the keynotes. I wish there were more keynotes. Last year, I think there was like 3 or 4 keynotes. I was like waking up, living for watching those keynotes. And this year there was only 2. So I'm kind of like, I wish there was some more keynotes, because if anything, those keynotes, like where people explain their experience of how they've kind of become successful through TPT, they light fires in me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this journey for them was like that, and like, look at them now, you know what I mean? Or look at how amazing they've made this thriving business. Like, I loved hearing about the keynotes. But yeah, like I said, I wish there was a couple more, and I wish they kind of did them similar to the way that they did them last year, because I feel like with the keynotes this year, I don't know if they just felt a bit more rushed because they were live presentations. Felt like last year they had a bit more time to really explain because it was a virtual option for a keynote. So I think what I also got from the conference is just reaffirming to myself that, you know, this is a business that does take time, and we are in a generation of this new wave of TPT sellers that there's a lot out there. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of things that are going on, and there's a lot of things that we don't have to be stressing out about when we're in the early days of the business. We think, you know, we have to do this and do this and do this and do this to keep up, but we're trying to match our day 1 to someone's day 1000, and that's, I think, kind of dangerous. So like, it really depends on your situation, which is what will determine what you have time for. Some people, you know, like, kudos to Becca, she is a machine when it comes to like her content creation and all that, but we do have to keep in mind, you know, as far as we can see, like, she doesn't have children yet, so that is one thing. Like, in my situation, I have a child I have to care for, so that takes a lot of my time. So if you have children, you'll know that being a primary caregiver, like, that's a lot on your plate. So your time is limited, especially when they're in that like under 2 age. So that's one thing. And if you're in a situation where you are like a single person, or like you don't have kids yet, like, and you're wanting to get on this, you are in the perfect situation to do this. If you're wanting to start this and you are in that phase, like say if you're, I don't know, a young teacher that is just like looking into other ways of earning money online, you've not got a partner, or even if you do have a partner but you don't have kids yet, and you've got a lot of time on your hands, then this would be a perfect time to start. Or even in the contrast, if you're someone that's older that's trying to transition out of the classroom, that's another perfect situation to do something like this. And it's not to say that you can't do it when you're in a situation like myself where you have kids, or you have, you know, an elderly parent or someone to take care of. You absolutely can, and you make it what you can, and you do what you can when you can. But just know that everyone's situation is different. So if you're like looking at someone and you're thinking, how are they so successful? How are they getting so much money? Think about how much time they've got on their hands to actually dedicate to this. What are they doing? What are they sacrificing? They might be sacrificing hanging out with friends, watching TV, doing little things in their day-to-day life that, you know, other people are doing. And so a lot of business stuff, there is some sort of sacrifice, but it is important just to know if you're a newer seller in that 1 to 3 years, sort of like how I'm feeling at the moment, you know, just we don't need to do it all. And it's been reaffirmed by the seasoned sellers, we don't have to do it all. Pick your one thing, focus on product creation, master your SEO. That's the 3 kind of key things I've really got from this. And again, thumbnails and previews are important as well. And be mindful that there are people on TPT that are still successful and they don't have social media at all. If you looked at what It's All Primary showed through the survey, they were saying a lot of people from that graph, they're earning money on TPT, didn't have anything else besides their TPT, like no social medias, I mean. So that was well. What I would actually like to see from TPT in the future for like these conferences would probably be more business strategy things, and even possibly business strategy from outsiders, like not just in the TPT community, maybe bringing in some outside business coaches or outside digital download or digital economy experts of how, you know, they're finding the digital economy and what other things are out there as well. I think that'd just be kind of interesting. I don't know if that's kind of a bit of a weird, crazy idea or not, but it would just be kind of interesting to see other people, other professionals, or even like what would be really interesting would be to see like a member of Team TPT communicating with some like other CEOs of other like online companies to see kind of having a conversation about business and just how things are going, what they're doing to promote certain things, and like just having a conversation. That would be really interesting as well. And also one other thing too that I feel like I'd like to see, I guess, as topics is ways to identify trends, because there are like people say, you know, if you can do trend things and then evergreen, but when you're thinking of trends, like sometimes it's hard to figure out, well, when are the trends? How do we pinpoint when a trend is coming, or when we're in a trend, in a particular trend, to have something out for that particular trend? This is just my selfish personal kind of interests. I would like to see a bit more about actual email lists and how to actually start one, but also comparing different email providers, pros and cons to each, because you know, everyone's saying, get an email list, get an email list, get an email list. Yeah, that's fine, but how do I know which one's going to be right for me? Is there anyone out there that has tried them all and said legit, like, this is the best one out there because of these reasons, or this is why I've chosen these reasons? And, or even just like having a step-by-step, how do you go from transitioning yourself? What are the steps? What are the things to do? There was one session on email, and that was a good one, but it was more about the mistakes people are making rather than how do I actually go about choosing the right email list for me, and all of that kind of stuff. That's just something that I would like to know personally. Also, one last thing too, just like mental health also, I feel like needs to be mentioned, at least one thing in the session. Like there should be a mental health aspect, just like on mental health for being in this business and keeping, like, I know we should all know this, but it's good to have a good reminder to know that it is important to actually reset our brains and our bodies, and not to be like, okay, let's just be on this hamster wheel of if I don't do this, because you know, a lot of the times we need rest. We need to be able to have that time away from the business, have that time to switch off. Because if we're always switched on, we get to that point where we're burnt out and fatigued, and we need to make it more normal. Even in the YouTube community, a lot of the YouTubers are now really coming out saying like, I'm burnt out. You know, I am burnt out. I've got too much on my plate. Like, brains are not designed to be switched on all the time. There needs to be a period of rest. And like I heard today, in some video I watched, we are human beings. We need to be at times. We're not human doings. We're human beings. So I think a mental health aspect on TPT in the conference would be a really important one to focus on, and also be like shining a light on a little bit in a fun and engaging way, but like something that we need to like just be reminded about, and have some really helpful tips as well. I don't know. I've heard from Day Dot, and I've still realized that more now. It is a marathon, not a sprint. This is something that you see in the future. It's not a get rich quick scheme. As some of the other YouTubers have also said, if you're just here to earn a couple bucks really quick, it's not what this is. It's like, what I want to say is choose hard paths instead of easy yeses. I think that's important, to choose hard paths instead of easy yeses. So I'm going to leave you with these quotes. If something comes easy, it won't be worth it. If it's worth it, it won't come easy. And I really also like this quote by Dr. Steve Marboli. Everything is easier said than done. Wanting something is easy, saying something is easy. The challenge and the reward are in the doing. So I hope this video has given you some food for thought. Sorry if it was a little bit long, but you just know how I get. So with that said, wishing you health, wealth, and happiness in your TPT business and in life. Thank you once again. Feel free to check out these videos if you like, and I will see you in my next video. Adios!